honestly, I think that you should target like the younger generation, whether it's high school students or late grade school students. You want to get these concepts to people while they're young, so you could hopefully prevent potential mistakes that people that came before them made.
Hey everyone, I'm Deshaun Peterson and welcome to the Blueprint and FPA NexGen Podcast. On this week's episode, we are going to be interviewing Jolisa Gonzalez, who is the Business Development Manager at Stratos Wealth Partners.
Jolisa, you mentioned that your interest in finance started or originated from high school. What experience did you have in high school that led you down that path?
Yeah, actually, surprisingly, it wasn't a class or anything because finance, math, none of that was my favorite subject. It was just, in high school, you're getting ready for college and they're like, oh, what career do you want to go into? And I'm like, I don't know. So I just looked oh, good jobs to get into. And one of the first things that popped up was financial advising. And I was reading the description of it and I was like, oh, I'm actually good at this kind of stuff, when it comes to managing money and all that type of stuff. And the investing area I thought was pretty interesting. So that's how I got into it. I ended up shadowing a financial advisor at Fifth Third, and she just solidified the fact that I wanted to get into the industry because I did like that aspect that, eventually one day maybe I could become an independent advisor and open up my own shop.
You came out the gate ready for your own RA. I think most people don't even know where to start, and you're already yep, my own shop. That's lovely. I love to hear it. But yeah, so thank you for joining us, Jolisa, the Blueprint FPA NexGen Podcast. I'm your host, Deshaun Peterson, and this is my co-host, Mike Zarelli, and we really want to thank you for just taking the time to speak with us today.
Of course, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
No, thank you for joining us because one of the main objectives of the podcast is really just sparking the discussion for young planners, career changers, and just financial services professionals who aren't established. They really want to hear those stories, those wins, the losses, and just those stories of diligence and how you got through it, because I think there's a lot more people who want to hear the up and coming story because we hear so many stories about the well-established. So we're really just trying to bring something new to, just our space. And I think you're one of the perfect people to help us with that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think it's important because I know this can be a very tough industry. And when you're just seeing the success stories, you're like, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing the right things? And then hearing different perspectives from different people is also nice because everybody's journey and everybody's route is different. So you may be here comparing yourself to Joe Schmo, but you're actually doing good and Joe Schmo's doing good. And so is Susie, Sally, and I don't know the other person's name, but I think it's good that you guys are doing this podcast because it can be very overwhelming, and seeing that there's other people going through the same thing, the same struggles, it could be a feel good.
It could be isolating.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, we all have our community, and we're here to put the bullhorn on it. Let's jump right into it because Jolisa, we met, I want to say probably within the last year. And one thing that stood out to me was you're one of the people who stood out as far as making content already with your firm at a junior or associate level. And I follow it. I see it. I like it. Can you tell us about that? Was that your idea to get into the content game for the firm? Or was that initiative that you spearheaded? And just talk us about how that has come about into your current role.
I would say it was kind of a group effort. When I joined this advisor, he was already making video content, but it was just strictly on YouTube, unlisted. So that's where we started off with. So in the beginning, we're doing a lot of long form videos. And I was like, listen, everybody's attention span is very bad. We have to break it down. So we finally got it shorter to 90 to 60 seconds, which I feel like those actually have been a lot better received than our long form content because people's attention spans are short, and also the subject is not really interesting for the most of the population. So I've really been enjoying doing that because not only are we able to help our clients, but there's people in my personal life and maybe his friends and his family that are watching this content and learning a lot in such a little amount of time.
That's so cool to have your own imprint. Like you're saying, hey, this what you're doing is great, but we can make it better and get more traffic by shortening it and just making a clear message. So that's cool that you've already had your imprint on. I know one thing with creating content is it takes a lot of time to build up that confidence. So what has worked well for you in building up your confidence to continue this journey of creating content?
So I'm not gonna lie, like when I was in grade school in 5th grade, I would always make videos, stupid videos, and post them on YouTube. And even now, like I won't really make videos, but I'll be like cooking in the kitchen, like, okay, guys, here is my cooking show. We're gonna add a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So that's kind of how I practice my stuff. And, I feel that it's a lot easier to do this stuff online in front of a camera than in front of people. You don't have anybody watching you. You don't have anybody potentially judging you. I mean, they may judge you after the fact, but I'm never gonna know because they're not gonna say it to my face. That's just like, you just have to have that mentality of whatever, who cares? It is what it is. Like they don't really care as much as they think you do, because if you were in their shoes and you were to see a video, like you probably aren't going to judge it as hard as you think people are going to be judging you. So it's just whatever, just do it, get over it. You'll be fine. Make your mistakes, look stupid. It'll get better over time.
We got to get out of our own way sometime.
Exactly.
What would you say to advisors, associates who want to do content, right? And they're staring in the mirror, like, psyching themselves out. What like pragmatic steps would you give them? Like you could do 1, 2, 3 today, or, what advice would you give them?
So I guess like manifestations, or like lie to yourself, like, I'm great. This is going to turn out amazing. Like I could do this. Like my stuff is probably going to come out better than that person. Like, there's other people out here that are looking worse than me. Do that. Another thing is just practice. Practice makes perfect. You could always like record yourself beforehand, listen to yourself, see where you could improve. You could do it in front of your family, someone that you're comfortable with. Because there's some family members that are like, what are you doing? And they start laughing at you. And I don't think they're going to make the situation any better. So just believe in yourself, or lie to yourself if you need to. That's what I always do, is just, oh yeah, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be great. And then it's fine.
Totally agree with the affirmation side. If you repeat that over and over again, and you'll build the confidence with the reps. I mean, a lot of this industry is just about those reps, and you'll get better with each one. So I had a question about, creating the content. How has that helped you out in meeting with clients? So you're creating content, but then how does it translate to those client meetings?
So I have been joining client meetings a lot more this year, and it's funny because they're like, oh yeah, I know you. You're that girl from the video. And then so it makes the conversation a lot more light and comfortable. They kind of know me a little bit. They know me to see, like, they know my personality, and it just makes things flow a little bit easier. And I know that I have had a lot of good compliments from those videos.
Yeah, that's so cool. I do agree with that. Like getting online and having clients kind of see you and your personality ahead of time, like that does help bring down that barrier, especially as a younger advisor. It shows, oh, she actually does know what she's talking about. I can listen to her and not just the lead advisor. So it's definitely beneficial to that relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And then I've been in communication with a lot of them for like over a year and a half, and none of them ever saw me before. So another good thing is it was putting a face to the name and just putting those puzzle pieces together and giving me a little bit more reps in the game.
More reps, never enough.
Anywhere in life, honestly.
Yeah, the more attempts at bat is what me and my colleagues say. Just need more attempts at bat, and I definitely understand that. And just translating to that, so like, could you talk about your journey as an associate working under a senior advisor, and like your aspirations? Like, I know that in the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned, eventually I do want to start my own shop, but like, where are you in that journey right now? Like, let's timestamp it today. Like, where are you? We're almost halfway through the year, so there has to be progress. So could you just share a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so like anything I do, my journey was very unconventional, not like most people's. I started working with this advisor about a year and a half ago, and initially my main focus was the client relationships aspects and the marketing aspect. Obviously, that's not what I wanted to get into, but I learned that it actually has been very beneficial to me. In terms of the marketing side, I have learned a lot more about the industry and the different things to talk about with the clients and the different conversations that need to be had, which is great. And then in terms of, just like scheduling meetings and helping them with stuff, I was able to build that relationship with the clients, and they're able to come to me and know me as a reputable source. Whereas, say, if I were to have just jumped in and got on my license right away and then started it that way, I may have had missed out on some opportunities for growth that I had with my journey. So this year, my focus is more so transitioning out of those initial roles with the client relationship and the marketing, and then moving more into an advisor focused role. So I've been starting to get some of my licenses. I plan to continue to do that throughout the year. Like I mentioned before, I have been sitting in on those client meetings, which I am not the best with small talk. I'm in the wrong industry, obviously, but being in these client meetings and just watching the back and forth and how things flow has made me so much better without even having to like put in any effort at all, which is great, because that's something I've always been concerned about. Is like, okay, like, what are we going to talk about? But being there and watching things unfold, I've already been able to like practice and use it in my own personal life and with clients, and things have been going a lot more smoothly. So I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. Slow and steady wins the race. I just try to have to remind myself not to compare myself to other people who are in the industry, because like I said earlier, everybody's journey is different. I am learning a lot of different things right now in terms of running the business, marketing for the business, all the different variables. And I feel like that's important for my long-term vision of where I want to be, because a lot of people may miss out on those variables. And when they do decide to become like an independent, have their own shop, they really don't have the business structure, the business mindset that they need. So I'm enjoying the journey. I'm appreciating everything. Everything happens for a reason, and you can learn from everything, especially your mistakes.
Yeah, it's like you got to be a sponge early on and learn all those different hats, because that just makes you a Swiss Army knife, whether it's at another firm, this firm, or your own firm. It's super important. Now, you said something at the end I want to tease out a little bit, especially those mistakes. Do you want to share like some of those experiences you went through and how you learned or what you learned from them?
Yeah. Let me try to think of a good one. Okay, so back in my previous role, my boss's name was Jeff, and I had this habit of like accidentally like emailing another Jeff in the company, and like it happened multiple times. I'm like, he was pretty up there. Like, I'm like, this is the wrong person to be doing this to. So from that, I just learned like triple check, quadruple check everything. It does not matter how many times you do something, always check, because you could be doing something, you could have a random thought about dinner, and then you miss that mistake right there. I don't care how long you've been doing something, just go over, look it over, make sure that all your boxes are checked, because no one is perfect. And everyone makes those mistakes. And it's okay to make them here and there, but it's just important to learn from those mistakes. And I feel like some of my most valuable lessons, they were made from those. So I have not accidentally emailed anybody in a long time. So I think I learned from that mistake.
I think that's a mistake we all can relate to. I think that one of the greatest things, and just piggybacking on what you said, Jolisa, is I added a time delay on my emails for that same reason. I was just emailing the wrong people or typos. You know, like you say, we all have shortened attention spans. So sometimes you can read something, you send the message, you know, et cetera. You kind of skim through it and you just might not see it. But internally, I don't know what it is about us as humans, but when you click send, all of a sudden your mind's like, oh, something's wrong.
It's like, oh.
It's like, oh, no, I just sent it. And it's like, okay, it's sitting in my outbox for like at least a minute. So I can definitely relate to that, like those typo emails. That's something we all been through. And it's never over.
Yeah, even now, like I have Grammarly installed in like my Outlook just because like you can read something 10,000 times and you will never see the mistake. So now Grammarly is like, okay, look, you missed that. I'm like, thank goodness you told me because that would have made me look stupid.
Grammarly on Chrome, Outlook. I'm almost like at the point where I actually want to get the premium just because I'm like, what am I missing?
Right, exactly.
But just to jump right into it, could you talk about your experience with FPA and NexGen, how you found the organization, you know, what are you doing with it? And I know you have some other outside organizations you're a part of as well. We'd love to hear about that because we know that being new in the industry, getting involved is a huge component. So just really exploring the different ways that younger advisors or associates or people in the industry, could you just share a little bit about that, Jolisa?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of the FPA, I really haven't had too much exposure with them. I have seen some things here and there, but I do have to admit I need to do a deeper dive on that. But in terms of my other things that I am involved in, I am involved in helping plan the Ser Latino Financial Advisor Summit, which that's something that I'm very passionate about because in this industry, Latinos were like 1-2%. So I've always felt very, I can't think of the word, like different in comparison to everyone else. Not only am I Latino, but I'm a female, which is also very rare in the industry. So having a place that not only are there Latinos, but there's a lot of females that are in that corporation, that has been very nice to be involved in that and to just see, you know, so many successful people in the industry and how far they come and hear their struggles. It's just really inspiring to hear that. And the initiatives that we have been trying to do with them is great because the conference is honestly like none other. It's more like we're creating a community, a family where we could all get together, be ourselves, be our authentic selves, because a lot of the times we have to put on a cover to be like everybody else who's in the room. Whereas here we could be ourselves.
That's awesome. And I think I want to ask about like the initiatives that you guys are putting together and how can we increase this population, not only the women, Latinos, and then, you know, other minorities, to grow this population of financial advisors. It is mostly older white males and we're trying to shift towards it. But like what have you been working on to shift that dial, that pendulum?
So STAT is very new. They just started last year. There was only about 50 attendees. This year, we're really trying to up our marketing game and find as many people in the industry as we can that are Latino. So there's a lot of initiatives we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of Conexiones events, which is pretty much people from our team will go on LinkedIn Live, bring our community together. We'll talk about a special topic. I believe the last one was about psychology and financial planning and how you could intertwine those together. And that was a very interesting topic that we did. A lot of the people in the community do a lot of pro bono work, which I love a lot because I think that is very important and that a lot of people need that and that more people should probably be doing that. Honestly, I just think that by increasing the awareness of this conference and possibly working with colleges or high schools and getting them involved and educating those groups of people on the industry, because not really a lot of people know about the industry. They're like, oh yeah, investing, I don't know. But like actually doing the part to educate the importance and how you could like change lives and how it is actually a very good career to get into. I think that's very important.
That's super important. And just to piggyback on that, you mentioned pro bono. Could you just share about that? Like, why is that so important to you? You know, and what do maybe advisors get wrong about pro bono? I know that it's just something a part of our industry. We want to serve our clients and serve, you know, our communities or the individuals we want to work with. But could you just elaborate on that a little bit more, like why pro bono is so important to you?
Pro bono is so important because there are just so many people who end up in very bad financial situations just for the simple fact that they don't know any better. They don't teach that in most schools. They don't teach that in most colleges. Nobody ever gets the proper education that they need. But then people point their finger at them and say, why are you doing this for? Like, it's common sense. Well, unfortunately, like for a big part of the population, especially the Latino population, it's not. It's complicated, stressful, things that you don't know. And it's the way that the information is delivered traditionally. It's just not something that could be absorbed easily. So I think the pro bono part is so important is because there's just such a gap in the education when it comes to the financial literacy aspect. And if more people were to go take time out of their day and help these people, there would possibly be less people in these financial situations. And also, like, this is all generational. Like, the people who are having these issues with their money, their parents had issues, their great-grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. And the same thing going forward, their parents, their grandchildren, it's going to keep on repeating until someone intervenes and gives them the education that they need. And then hopefully those cycles can start breaking and loosening and that type of stuff. And I mean, honestly, this business, like, you can do very well in this business and people can become very successful. And I feel that it's important to take your time and pay back, especially if you are one of those people who are already up there and have like established yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think in general, that's what this planning profession is all about, is giving back, whether it's doing pro bono or giving back to the next generation of financial planners, giving your time to mentor and educate and be somebody that they can come to with questions. Now, I wanted to ask, because I'm super interested in this pro bono topic, like, is there any struggles or what barriers are there into getting into pro bono?
I think that there's the time aspect. You know, being in this industry, you can be very limited on time. So adding something else to your plate can feel impossible at sometimes. I also know that, well, I don't know, I'm not sure how different companies operate. If like the people who are above you would want you to go out and spend your time doing that. Maybe it's you don't know where to start or what communities to go into, who needs to help, all that type of stuff. But I mean, with a little bit of research and planning, I feel that, you know, you can make anything possible if you really want to put your mind to it.
I have one more question on this pro bono topic. So the question is, like, where do you start? Are there any specific associations or organizations that you would recommend? And then tying it back to work, working with more clients is more of those reps. How has it benefited back to your main job of working with clients?
I think one foundation that I know off the top of my head is the Foundation of Financial Planning. They have worked closely with the Stratos partners. I know a lot of advisors have teamed up with them to get their pro bono work. Outside of that, honestly, I think that you should target like the younger generation, whether it's high school students or late grade school students. You know, you want to get these concepts to people while they're young, so you could hopefully prevent potential mistakes that people that came before them made. In terms of myself, I haven't touched on any pro bono work. I'm still pretty fresh in the industry. I feel that I need a little bit more underneath my belt in order to, go out and do that stuff. But I know that when I am ready for that, some of my pro bono work or my giving back could be helping like the children, the grandchildren of the clients, because, they don't really have any money to manage, but they definitely need that financial literacy. And, their parents could be teaching it to them, but I want to be able to give it in a way that is relatable to people, because there are resources out there people try to teach, but it's boring. It's not relatable to the kids. You got to make it like interesting and something they would actually want to listen to.
Yeah, just a personal anecdote. Even this week, I was working with some beneficiaries of a client, all in their 20s, grandkids. And I asked every single one of them before I even talked, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your knowledge of just the stock market? And all of them were on the below a 5. So we had to take the baby steps of explaining everything. And it's so true. There's just not that baseline financial literacy being taught.
So, if you're new in the career, if you're new to this business, doing some of this work early on could help you with the conversations and your communication skills with your actual client. So, you may be nervous at first. You may not be able to have like the type of client meetings that you want to. Why not practice with these people? Because they may judge you less than, the actual people that you're trying to target. So I feel like that's another thing to take into consideration early on.
Yeah, I think just picking back on what you said, the education around financial advising, and most people, their instinct is investment management. I don't have enough money, or, really learning it's a holistic thing. There are different components, different segments, like cash management, taxes, even just like making sure all the state and, the bank accounts are updated. There are easy wins, I call them, that all encompass financial planning, just financial advising. So I think, like you say, that financial literacy it's not just trying to pick a stock and trading. And I think that's just a huge misconception out there. And I'm glad you shed some light on that and sharing the importance of that.
And then, by starting with them young, maybe they'll be able to get to the point where we can talk about the investments and whatnot. Just laying that foundation, getting them started on the right point. Who knows what the possibilities are going to be.
Jolisa, you said something earlier that actually I wanted to just learn your thinking behind it. You said, I didn't get licensed immediately. I didn't want to learn and be a sponge first, and now I'm going through the process. Most people, I would say, they start and they just try to get the licenses first or as soon as possible, then ramp up their business, their book, etc. Can you take us through that process, or your thinking of why you chose to wait to get your licenses as opposed to just starting out the gate, since you said even earlier in your career or just in your education, you knew you want to be an advisor. So could you share a little bit more on that too? Because I think that one question I get from just people in general, and I'm pretty sure, Mike, you get the same thing, is, I'm thinking about getting this designation or this FINRA exam. But you're even taking it a step further or prior and saying, why do I need to get it now? You answered that question. Why do I need to get it now, or can I get it later? Could you share a little bit about that?
So I'm not going to lie. I actually did want to get all my licenses first, but the way things worked out, that's not what happened. So I tried to switch my mindset a little bit and see, okay, how is this benefiting me for the long run? And honestly, looking back at it, if I know what I know now and how things are going, I probably would have continued on the same journey that I'm on, because, okay, you get your licenses. And then what? Then you do all the training and stuff anyways. So might as well do all the training and stuff, get your licenses, and then boom, you go out the gate running. You have a lot more knowledge under your belt when it comes to the industry or working with the clients or this or that, etc. And it may be a little less overwhelming if, say, you get your license and then you're trying to be all rushing and fast and trying to do all this at one time. It may be overwhelming and you may not get the results that you want to get. in comparison, if you would have did it the other way, take your time, absorb, get the licenses, and then you may feel a little bit more comfortable when the time actually comes. Because I know personally, I don't know how I would have operated if I would have got licenses and then, okay, now you're in the field. Like, wait a second, I'm not ready. You're like, you better be ready.
That's true. I think a lot of people don't think about that. Like I won't say accountability, the responsibility of having a license, because a firm is now sponsoring you and it's not free. And now, you have to exercise it to some degree. So I think that's fair, no matter how the cars fall, right? Just really considering both ends of the spectrum of, you get your license now, you come out the gate, you might have some formal training, but you haven't had like that socialized, the real world experience, as opposed to what you're saying, your situations, you're actually meeting with clients, you're sitting on meetings, so you're just starting your registration process. So you're actually coming into the game, with a whole different perspective, as opposed to maybe other people who maybe took the licensing up front. So not saying one is right or the other, but I just think it's fair to share that, there is not one right way to do it.
Exactly. And that's important to know, because it could be very intimidating not knowing if you're doing the right thing or not. So I'm always someone trying to look at the bright side of things. So that's how I did it there.
Very cool. Kind of on that point, on the bright side of things, one thing that we like to talk about is that your career is not linear. It doesn't just go up and to the right. There's obstacles, there's adversity that we go through. And a lot of times that's where you learn how to be a better advisor, a better worker or employee. So can you tell us about some trials and tribulations that you've gone through and how you made it through on the other end and what you've learned?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that comes to mind is when I actually started working with Stratos Boat Partners. I was there only 1 month before the infamous COVID shutdown. I remember it was like maybe like my first or second week there. We were in our staff meeting. They're like, okay, this is what we're going to do if we shut down. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm like, that's not going to happen. And then boom, like a week later, it closed. Everything closed. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I'm in a new job. The world has closed down on me. I'm like, what do I do? It was a hard time for me, because the job that I came from previously, everybody was very close-knit family aspect. Like, it was like this. When I came here, I didn't have that, just for the simple fact that I didn't have any time to build any of those relationships. I had 1 month, and I'm an introvert. So like, I didn't have time to warm up to people yet before things shut down. We were communicating via email, but that's also complicated, because you're like, does this person hate me? Like, they didn't use like an exclamation point. I don't know if they're mad at me or like, what's going on? Like, it's hard to read people's emotion over email and build those relationships. So that was hard. When things finally opened back up, we were back in the office. I'm like, okay, things are going back to normal. Me and the girl that I was working with, we were starting to build more of a relationship. And then about like a year and a half in, I found out that like she was like leaving like in a month. And I was like, what do you mean you're leaving in a month? I'm like, we just started like figuring things out. So like, she did as much training as she could over that month. But the role I was in was like ever changing, so complex. There was always different variables being thrown at you, different ways to do things, this, that, the other. Like, it was just all over the place, whether it was managing our boss's hectic schedule or planning a whole entire conference. Like, I never planned a conference before. Like, I know nothing about that. Like, reading through all these contracts and all this type of stuff, it was overwhelming, because not only did we just get back in the office, I lost one of the people that, I kind of had a relationship with, and the job that I was in, like, it's not trainable. Like, you're never going to be able to be 100% trained on the job, because everything is just ever changing. But, I just try to, take a deep breath, take one thing at a time, prioritize what's urgent, what's not urgent, what are things that need to be done now, and what are things that I could work on when I have extra time. And, having that mindset of knowing like everything is not urgent. Everything does not need to get done immediately. Prioritize your time, take things in like bite-sized pieces, whether that is working on one project for a certain amount of time each day, or that is pushing it off maybe to the following week while you have other fires you're trying to put out. That's just so important, because I know a lot of people are unable to maintain like a work-life balance just for that aspect, because their list is growing and growing and growing and growing, and they feel that they constantly have to work on everything. But that's not really how things work. You're going to get burned out eventually. If you work so much without taking a break, you may be working, but how productive are you actually being? Are you actually getting done what you need to get done, or are your wheels in your brain just as you're trying to like figure everything out? So I think it's just, what I learned from that is just take things one step at a time. Of course, there's the people who are above you that try to like, I don't know how to keep my mouth shut. So I'm like, it's okay. And this not needs to be done now. Like, it's fine. It'll get done. Like, I got this. And they like that about me, because I always like stood my ground, and I always told them what was on my mind. Some people are like, you can't do that. Oh my God. I'm like, I mean, whatever. It's fine.
No, that's so good. You said something that really stood out to me. I think this is a really important point, because people joining the industry might feel this pressure as well. You said you can't be 100% every day. But I think as as people new to the industry have this maybe internalized pressure, like I have to be 100% every day, 110%, working 9 to 9, 6 days a week. Can you just share about like why that isn't effective, or why you think it doesn't work, and how you took it and made it your own, as far as how you're being effective, with everything you said? Like, some days you aren't 100, some days you're 60, some days you're 80, some days you're 120, because you just explained that. And so just new people to the industry can give themselves some grace. I think that's what I'm searching for, the word or phrase, giving yourself some grace. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I think this industry is so tough, because they really are like the ones who are like, you better put in all these hours, because if you're not putting in all these hours, you're not going to be getting the work done that needs to be done, and the deliverables, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But, I know so many people who work 10, 20 more hours than me, and they get less work done than I do. So I'm like, does that make sense? But another aspect that you need to look at is, are you doing the things in the most efficient way possible? And when looking at that, there are certain ways to do things, but you always need to be looking for better ways to improve your processes. With technology, things can be sped up so much more now, and people are so afraid because they feel so busy that they can't take the time to do a little bit of research on how they can improve their process. But they need to realize that that little bit of time, extra time invested now, could save so much more time in the future. That's how you get more time in your day, is figuring out better ways to do things. And that's where the extra time comes from. And, you just always have to maintain a work-life balance. You're not on this earth to work 24/7. There's so many people that have lost out on so many family events, friend events, important time, because they didn't know how to put those boundaries in place. And not only does that affect your mental, but that could affect your physical, that could affect so many things. So yeah, if you want to work with no break, it's going to catch up to you one day. And are you really going to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor? But also with it, like, there are going to be times where you are going to have to put in the extra work. There are times where you're going to feel like 105% or 110%. When you feel that way, put in as much work as you can, with limits, of course, so that when you are feeling the 60%, you can give yourself a little bit more leeway. Or in the same token, when you have extra time in your day, it's not busier. If your week is not as busy as it usually is, that's the time when you could take to look into new ways and do things, or see how you could start early on certain projects or get certain things done. So that way, when your schedule does get ramped up again, you may not have to put in those extra crazy hours. You can still maintain that work-life balance. So pretty much with that, put in the work, with your best work when you're feeling 105%. So then it could offset when you're feeling 60%. And when your schedule is shorter, not shorter, but if it was not as busy as normal, take the time to plan for when it is busy, what you could do to make your life easier when the busy times come. Because I feel like a lot of people, they wait till last minute to do things, and then when the time comes that they had planned to do it, something else comes up and they're like all frantic and they're working out crazy and da-da-da-da. Some people were good under pressure last minute, but I feel that it's unnecessary. I hate working last minute.
That's so good. I do want to be conscious of time, but one question we usually ask is like, who's your first client? But Jolisa, you say you mentioned you're still in the client service and supporting a senior advisor. So one question I would like for you to describe to us is, what was your first day at work like at your current firm? Describe that day to us.
So do you want it so I've been with Stratos and I worked for two different people. Do you want it like who I'm with now, or do you want it?
Stratos, like day one, you walked in, new firm, not new advisor, new firm, first day at Stratos. Like, what were you feeling? How was that day? Walk us through that day.
Okay, so let me go back 4 years. I walked in, I'm an overly anxious person as is, so I walked in like, oh my God, I have to meet all these new people. This is stressful, like, oh my God. But everybody was very nice. Everybody was very welcoming. They showed me to my desk, and I got to my desk, and I was like, it was big. Like, where I came from, I used to work in the housing eviction court, okay? And we had like a bunch of like small cubicles lined up against the wall. And then there was like a little corner with like a chair and then there was like tables around it. That's where I used to sit at. So then I came to this big cubicle. I'm like, oh my God, wow, this is like a mansion. I love this. So that was great. I liked that. They gave me a tour of the office. They were introducing me to a bunch of like the advisors and the staff, all that type of stuff. I think I ended up going out to lunch to this place called Pinstripes in Beechwood, Ohio. I had the best Caesar salad and flatbread pizza ever. And then I think it was just like getting my technology set up, all that type of stuff, just, getting acclimated with the new space and all that type of stuff.
Very cool. Love that you thought the cubicle was a mansion.
Seriously,
That was
you
funny.
should see where I used to sit at. It was like a dungeon.
One last question to wrap us up. What would you say your superpower is that you bring into work every day?
I think that, my superpower is that I'm always striving to improve myself, whether that is educating myself on new things that are going on in the world, or that is listening to podcasts, reading newsletters, blogs, any of that type of stuff. I think that the fact that I have that urge to keep on learning, and I have a process where I do it every single day, it just makes me be prepared and come up with new ideas and initiatives that is going to pay off, because a lot of people are not going to be keeping up with the game.
Absolutely. That strive to be a learner is going to compound in the long run and hopefully set you up for a very nice long career. Well, another excellent way to end the podcast. This has been the Blueprint and FPA NexGen Podcast. Jolisa, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next episode.